All right. So Oliver, thanks for coming on the show. I can't for the life of me remember how we connected, but it was probably through either a talent agency or one of these websites that I'm registered on. I'm sure like
Sure.
you. Yeah. But I'm always fascinated with people that started young and have built businesses. And, you do a lot with SEO and internet marketing, which I think is, huge these days that a lot of small business owners still don't get. But maybe we can go back to, because I know we were just talking off the mic, you're from Lancaster, Amish country, not Amish, but Amish country. And, tell me about your background, where you're from, and we'll work up to your experience in business. And I know you've run some businesses and sold some businesses. So is that a good track to run on?
Yeah, no pun intended. Great track.
Yeah,
So it's
right. Track 5 is the name of your company.
and the inside joke there is one of the companies that I own is called Track 5. So
Yeah, perfect.
yeah, so no, so yeah, I'm a son of an entrepreneur. So the story goes, right? And
Right.
I was actually born in London, England.
Wow.
We moved around the world, South Africa, Spain, Portugal, ended up in America. My dad had invested in a company here in Lancaster County. That's how we got to, everyone says, wow, you lived over the entire world and you settled in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So,
yeah, and by the way, people listening, it's not Lancaster.
It's Lancaster.
It's Lancaster. Yeah, right.
Yeah, get it right.
People don't pronounce it right. That's
so, yeah, he had a business that he invested in when we lived in Spain, and it was going under. Believe it or not, it was an egg farm. It was not the sexiest. Yeah, not the sexiest of business.
Is that like chickens or ducks or what?
No, like chicken eggs. But back, 30 years ago, they were making the first organic egg in the country, which now it's like, okay, no big deal, right?
Chickens in your backyard, right?
Yeah, 30 years ago, having organics were just getting started. Anyway, these guys were going under. They weren't doing well. My dad was going to lose all his money. So basically, he said, look, I will move my family over to America for 6 months and help you get back on track, help you run this business. So he did, and it succeeded, and we just never went back.
So you were in Spain.
Yeah.
The egg farm was in Pennsylvania.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
What was he doing for the egg farm from Spain?
So he was just an investor. So I don't know how a company from an egg farm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania makes its way to getting funding from somebody in Spain.
Is your dad Spanish?
What was that?
Your dad Spanish or English or?
No, all English. English. But my dad had created businesses.
I can tell from your accent,
Yeah, it's lost now. It's all gone.
Right. Well, you were young, so.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, so we stayed, right? So he ended up, long story short, he ended up buying another business that was deeply in debt, deeply troubled. And basically, they wanted some crazy amount of money for it. He walked in and said, look, there's, you have millions of dollars,
right.
You have no product. You're going to die in like 2 months here. I will take the business for a penny.
Just take it over.
I'll assume all the debt.
Okay. Well,
I'll let you
that's
walk
a
away
price,
from
right?
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, sure, take it. So he took it, and my dad had to call every one of the creditors and say, look, I'm a new owner. Give me 1 year, stay off my back for 1 year.
Yeah.
Let me work the business, and I promise you will get paid. And they all unanimously agreed.
Yeah. Well, I find that a lot of business owners, if they did approach their creditors, as opposed to going hiding, sticking their head in the sand, people will work with you. They don't want to lose their money either. Yeah.
Because what's the alternative? It's bankruptcy, and they're not going to get paid.
You spend a lot of money on legal fees and don't get paid anyway.
Yeah. And that company ended up going public and making millions and millions of dollars and being a massive company. So, I kind of grew up watching my father's work ethic and, the risk tolerance and growing businesses and the marketing side and the sales side. Very good salesman, and I'm a big believer, big proponent of, if you're an entrepreneur or you're in business, you have to invest in sales training. You have to be able to sell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the most critical feature you can have.
Right. And if you shy away from it, maybe entrepreneurship's not for you.
You can't out product your way through sales. You can't financially optimize yourself through sales.
Yep.
You can't, there's no substitute for hitting the pavement. My dad used to say something that I'll never forget. The one thing in business that I remember from my dad, he used to tell me, son, nothing happens until you sell something.
Yep. That's true.
And I remember that to this day.
Yeah. I think that's a Zig Ziglarism. Probably your dad learned from him.
Probably.
From years ago. But yeah, it's true. Nothing happens until a sale is made. Right.
It's true. And, I used to go into his library in his office. He had all these sales books, constant study of different sales methodologies. And I remember reading this book called, it was just a random, it was a telesales book back then, telesales,
Right.
So anyway, flash forward 20 years, I'm doing, I'm learning sales and I'm teaching myself, and I'm reading a book, and I end up realizing that the book that I was reading was the 20-year-old book, the dusty book that sat on my dad's thing. So we ended up reading the same sales book in our different journeys, when he was starting, when I was starting, and didn't even know it. So
Right.
some of these sales training books are timeless,
Yeah.
like this Sandler's. I mean, what's the one that said How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yeah. Dale Carnegie, maybe, or
Yeah, I think so. It's
yeah,
classic.
of
It's
course.
timeless.
Of course.
You
Look,
know?
look, everything gets more technologically based. Now it's internet marketing and this and that, but the basics are the same of selling and working with people and developing business. And yeah, you're right. I think it's a good point.
And selling, I mean, it's synonymous with persuasion, right? Or leading or selling, but, and it's not just selling your product, right? It's selling vision, and what is vision? Well, you use vision to bring on customers. You use vision to bring on financing or funding. You use vision to cultivate a team to follow you, right? So leadership, I mean, everything involves sales, and marketing is persuasive in nature. So if you can't sell, you end up doing really poor marketing.
It's true, right? People are, and a lot of it's emotional. People get an attachment to you. Or look, when you and I both know, if you're raising money for a business, they're generally investing in you. You don't have a product yet. You don't have really much of a track record. They don't have confidence in you, and you're not persuasive. They're not going to put money in your business.
It's right. That's absolutely correct. So, I was a paramedic for a period of time through school. I kind of had the mentality of, my dad worked tirelessly 7 days a week, worked all through vacations, always hustling. And, I kind of resented that as a kid. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to be chained behind a desk.
Right.
I'm going to go out and get out in the world. And, I made my way through sales, growing up in internet businesses. I've never been in an industry that's not an internet business. From right after high school, I use, a lot of the great thing about sales are a lot of them, they don't require a degree.
Right.
They don't require education. So I went in before I went to college in sales. And by the time I was halfway through my bachelor's degree, I had my own company.
Right. No, learning sales early definitely is a skill that a lot of people should acquire.
I mean, it took me 10 years, to finish my bachelor's and my grad school. And, it was because I was running businesses during the day. Multiple times.
But that's okay. That's where you get your street experience. And, you're a little bit younger than me. So I graduated college in 89, law school 92. So the internet was like just a thing in 1992. It was bigger in Europe. I went to some conference in the Middle East or something, kids from all over, and they were talking about this thing called the internet. I'm like, there's no such thing. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, listen, I live in America. We hear about everything first. That's the way it works in America. And then I get back and all these AOL discs are on everybody's porch and, the whole thing. So.
Yeah, I remember AOL. My mother still uses AOL. That's embarrassing.
Well, I mean, AOL Time Warner is a conglomerate. They still have their service, right? You still can.
Yeah, they still use it.
Probably doesn't do much like it used to be. It used to be a
I think my mom's their only customer.
Can you still get a disc for like 2,000 hours for free? I don't think so. Right? You
right.
can? Can you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's funny.
I said, Mom, we get, so she uses like Comcast internet to log on to AOL. So I was like,
that's
you don't need the AOL thing anymore. Right.
You don't need that.
She wants the email address.
There's still dial-up and DSL, like in the Midwest. They don't have the kind of infrastructure that we do. And so I met a guy who's in that business. Like he sells DSL services and dial-up service. I said, can you even buy a modem? Like you got to get them online, I guess. I said, no, here, everybody's just connected. He says, no, in the Midwest, it's not like that. Wow. That's why a lot of these legislative things are, there to try and build the infrastructure.
Yeah. It's crazy to think of certain places that don't have that, right? Like, it seems so like it shouldn't even be in America.
Could you imagine on today's internet how a dial-up service must work? How slow it was slow when we didn't have much going on the internet.
Yeah,
it must be like take a whole day to load a page. Just one line at a time. Yeah, right. You can't do streaming that way.
30 seconds, take an hour. Yeah,
no, you can't do that kind of stuff. So. Yeah. So I think though, a lot of your points about sales and knowing sales and marketing and knowing the difference between sales and marketing are so important. If anybody's looking to develop skills, whether they're in college or they're out working, definitely go and try some sort of a sales job where you can, be on the street, get some doors slammed in your face, learn how to be persuasive and do it at a point where you don't have a lot to lose,
right.
You have a lot of pressure.
And Mitch, that's a good point because, I don't know too many other professions where you hear no so many times, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that resilience to that no, that the ability to pick yourself up off the ground and to be able
Yeah.
to move forward, I feel is one of the cornerstone, traits of a good entrepreneur, right? How many times have people told me my ideas weren't good, or you're not going to be able to do this, or your company's too small, or these guys are way bigger than you, you're never going to be able to compete, these kind of things, right? Having a sales background or having the ability to overcome those type of objections or even just feelings, right? Like, oh, I'm not good enough, or you're
Right.
right, I am too small. Like being able to kind of reposition yourself and get up off the floor and get going. I mean, that's essential. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs give up way too early,
Much too early.
and then, but conversely, there's some entrepreneurs who keep on way too long, right?
Well, I mean, that comes with experience, right? We fail our way to success. But I think, yeah, with the earlier you face those adversity and objections and learn to overcome that, after a while, objections just are flags in the road. Oh, I'm this closer to a sale, or here's something else I got to deal with, and to make your business better. But you're right. I mean, experience does come with knowing when to fold your tent and move on to the next business, and sometimes that's difficult for a lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, even in the product life cycle, right? You have a maturity of products, and you have a retiring of products, right? So,
right.
There's always, so it's always there. So, to the original question, I was working for a company, an internet company, and I was in sales, but I really wanted to get into marketing. This is when I was like 19 years old. I really enjoyed marketing. I enjoyed both, but
what did the company do? It sold internet services?
No. So basically, we were a startup. We were a funded startup with about $2 million worth of seed. And what we were trying to do, I don't know if you remember a social networking site called Ning.
Ning? No, I don't.
Yeah, so
I don't
it was right there with MySpace and Facebook, right? And when Facebook was just getting started. And essentially what Ning's concept was that instead of having one social network, they would make the social network software, if you will, or architecture, and they would deploy wide. So they would basically have a social network for everything from hobbyist groups. Like if you wanted to have a law social network, you could just go in. It's kind of like creating a meetup page or something like that. You could go in,
you can create your own network within their
your own network frame. And you could administrate it, and then they would have the ability to run their ads all the way through their entire network, which could consist of hundreds of thousands of micro social networking sites. So we were in a competitor to them. We were competing to try to do the same thing. It's a company called LinkUp, and we were funded to try and do that. So we were creating professionalist social networks, hobbyist social networks, and really growing those. But I was really fascinated by the internet marketing side. So even though that wasn't my profession, I was kind of, sitting in the marketing team, kind of like during lunch and learning. I was reading avidly. And then, I wanted to kind of practice what I did. So I started blogging about, for example, sales. Actually, I had a sales blog for a while, and I would practice all my SEO on there. I'd read everything. I would study all day, all night, YouTube videos, books, everything I could possibly get my hands on. And I would learn, and I would just try it on this site. And then I found out what worked. And that was because nobody was going to hire me. I would try to get an SEO role or early digital marketing role. And, sales experience doesn't directly transfer over. So I had to kind of do it myself and get that experience, right? So, and I use that as a lesson too, because I have a lot of younger people at our company, right? And they want to learn things and they want to try things out. And I think a lot of people miss the opportunity to invest in themselves outside of their professional organization, right? So they wait for their company to invest in them exclusively.
Right.
And I've just never been assigned to that. If it's your craft, something you deem that you love enough to do for the rest of your life,
right,
you owe it to yourself to invest some of your personal time and finances into being the very best.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Be a student of your whatever it is you're interested in.
Yeah. So that guy that was one of the guys that was in the marketing department, he had a side hustle, and it was basically his side hustle was he was creating landing pages for nurses, for example. And every time a nurse would apply on this landing page, he would sell that information or sell that lead, if you will, to a staffing agency or a hospital or whatnot. He only had one client. It was one staffing agency in Ohio.
Got it.
And he said, look, every time you place a nurse through my internet marketing, you give me $2,000. And I said, okay. So he's been doing this for 15 months, sent them hundreds of nurses, and they haven't placed a single one. So he's going to shut it down. He was frustrated. And I said, look, I have an idea. I think I could change this business dramatically, and I think we could scale it. Let's go into business together. So we 50-50'd it up. We got in. And we went in. The first thing I did is change the accountability model. So it's not, I said, I think they might be placing, and I think that we can't have this based on the honesty principle. So we're going to charge a subscription fee, make it a SaaS, software as a service model. and we're going to cut this client off and go find another one because they're just taking everything and they're not paying.
Right,
Well,
so you figured there's no way that they're not placing anybody.
right.
They're just not telling you about
They're
it.
just not telling us. So I'm like,
Right.
we got to test. So we cut them off, right? So we send them an email saying, hey, we're going to, you apparently haven't been successful for a year and a half.
Right. So
We're
good
going to
luck.
cut you
Right.
off and we're going to go take it somewhere else and bring on some clients. We're also changing the model. Well, wouldn't you know, we get a phone call the next day from the owner of the company and saying, oh, there's been some misunderstanding. We forgot about you, and we've actually placed 15 nurses. Here's $30,000.
Nice.
So
Well, they
we
obviously
use
wanted
that.
your leads. They wanted those
Yeah,
to
yeah.
continue.
Right. And they wanted
Yeah.
to keep going. So we're like, great. Well, here's the model. It's a couple $1,000s a month now, and we're going to, blah, blah, blah. And, we ended up changing it. We ended up growing out the platform and bringing on, and that site alone ended up doing 7 figures. Right. And when we used that model and we said, wow, this works really well in nursing, perhaps it would work really well our clients who did nursing, the hospitals were saying, do you have therapists? Do you have doctors?
Right.
So we started building out this portfolio of job sites in these different verticals. Then we went to transportation, trucking, pilots.
Yeah.
And we replicated this model and this platform and expanded it obviously over time with functionality. And now we have hundreds upon hundreds of clients. We're about $7 million company, and that's what we do, right? So we build these professional sites out and we grow wide. Through that came people coming to us saying, hey, your internet marketing is on point. It's absolutely incredible. How do you rank for these terms? We've been paying people for years to do this. We can't even touch you.
A lot of people don't. They say they know SEO. They don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't figured it out. They haven't spent the time learning about it, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So we ended up creating a division called Trusted Search Marketing. It's a standalone digital marketing agency. We do a lot of digital recruitment marketing. So we work with a lot of people using the internet to hire and to recruit. But we also do your bread and butter general, work with a lot of e-commerce clients, everything from local businesses, law firms, things like that as well.
Right.
And it's really complemented the business because we can actually sell them on our services for example, our job boards, and then, bring them on to help them also do it. So one of our goals is we call it increased share of wallet, right? We want to be able to bring a client on and say, okay, you're paying us $1. How do we stretch that dollar to 2 or 3 or 10? So we can do that through adding products and upsells through our current platforms. But the agency has really helped us double, at a scale, that share of wallet in a way we couldn't have before. And it gives that client kind of that best of both worlds. Yes, I'm going to pay for the services that you guys are really good at, but also you're doing it for me and helping me build my internal processes as well. So it's been very complimentary. So we're really excited about it.
So the one side of the business is basically a placement agency where you're finding people, let's say for the medical profession or for the trucking industry. You mentioned pilots too. So
yeah.
So that's one side of the business. And the other side is like people saying to you, hey, you obviously find all these people for your placement business. How do you run your SEO? Can you do that for me? So you build the whole website, or you're just really doing the SEO work after the website's in place?
Generally the latter. Well, you
don't want to be in the website building business.
No, the website, nobody wants to be in the website business. It's a business that has
now. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has a massive scope creep, so it's really difficult to do that profitably because you price something out, you get into the business and, oh, I really like that. Or can you make this do that? And you end up, your time is your collateral, right? That's what you're pricing at. And, you end up spending way more time than you projected, but the client won't pay for necessarily more time. They believe it should just magically include all these things.
Right.
So it's really difficult. And I guess, attorneys are probably in the same boat as that, right? I mean, at some point,
yeah,
the case goes sideways or something happens or they want to do something else, the price goes up, and it's just kind of understood. I think it's more generally accepted in law than it is, for example, building, because
I mean, not, look, I do document work and transactional stuff on a flat fee basis often, and I price it to give me a cushion, but sometimes we exceed that cushion and the client's just bugging you all the time, calling you can we have another meeting about this? And I'm thinking, what do we have a meeting about? But it's another hour of my time or whatever. So but yeah, I understand. I understand. It's hard, but it's good because you're paying attention to the profitability side of your business and knowing your numbers and knowing where you make money. You can't be everything to everybody just because you think it's cool or whatever. If you're not making any money, what's the point?
Right.
So,
and sometimes it's a complementary, asset, right? So, sometimes we can't take on a client unless they redo their website. I spoke to a client yesterday who was having an e-commerce site issue, and she was using a GoDaddy e-commerce product, which we're not a big fan of. we couldn't work with her unless she replatforms the site onto at least something like Shopify or Evolution or something like that, or Magento, because we wouldn't be able to be successful with what we're doing. So she would pay us a lot of money, and at the end of the agreement, she would be disappointed.
Right.
So
So do you partner with other developers? So you would send her, listen, here's the people that we work with, let them develop your site. We'll work with them in the SEO. Do you do it that way?
So generally, if we're going to do a large marketing campaign, we'll do the build out of the website as well. So we have we have a bunch of programmers here and developers here, really talented engineers here. So we will do it only if it comes to the internet marketing side of it, because for us, it allows us to pad what we'll lose money on the website to make money on the internet marketing, right?
Right, I understand, but you're not going to do one without the other.
Right, but we won't just do a website by itself, because it's generally just not very profitable work, and it's very subjective. Like I can show you, rankings, and I can show you conversions, and I can show you social engagement, and those are numerics that are hard to argue with. But when we talk about a website development, we're talking about subjective things, colors, images, how it looks and feels,
right?
And everyone's got an opinion, so it just snowballs into this massive.
Yeah, you get into all the branding side of it and everything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So. But no, so we've primarily, and one thing I've learned too, this is interesting. So this is my second digital marketing agency. I had another big 7-figure agency that I started about 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Number of accolades. It still exists. Very, very successful agency. One of the 1% Google partners, all that kind of stuff. And we did everything for, kind of like you mentioned before, everything to everybody, right?
Right.
And what I found out is that it really broke our processes. And I was so inclined to want to do everything for everybody, because I wanted to be that business that would be, hey, whatever you need, we'll do it. You want us to cook you breakfast? Right. We'll do it.
Come in, don't leave. Right.
And we'll bill you for it. You know what I mean? Like whatever. But it was really hard to processize that. It was really hard to kind of, train on that and to scale that out. So this agency, we're doing it a little different. We're trying to build processes that allow us to train, grow, make sure the quality is there. And if something's not in that process, as much as I would love to take the money,
right,
if it's not a good fit, we're not going to bring them in.
Right.
Because it really stopped us from being able to grow past a certain point in my previous agency, because of the lack of being able to process, policy what we're doing. So
right.
that's one thing I've had to really learn, is to say no to bad work, if you will, to say yes to good work.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, especially business owners, miss that in the early days, especially, right? They want to be everything to everybody. They don't want to pass anything up. I don't know who's going to lead to what am I going to do? They don't pay attention to their profitability. Their customer service and accountability then suffers. The client has a bad experience, and then it all snowballs, and now it's having a negative impact. You think you're keeping business to keep revenue going, but at the end of the day, you're really not building quality service for the right kind of customers that you want to do business with. And I think it backfires.
Yeah, it does. And not just that, but there's a difference between kind of your startup grind mentality of, I'll do anything I need to do to get to an MVP, or I'll do everything I need to do to get to profitability. And that's okay. Right. But at some point, when your product or your business matures, you have to make that switch into long-term growth, scalability, and that's when, and slowing down and focusing. Right. And that's where it can be a little tricky. And even for me, like one of my biggest, hardest parts was going from, I love the startup grind. I love the pressure. I love the adrenaline rush behind the startup side of businesses.
Right.
And I love the chaos, like the organized chaos, because it really is a race against the runway, or a race against time.
It is kind of, yeah. A lot of people, charged by that.
Right. For me, I loved it so much that I continued it multiple years into the company when we didn't need to, when we were profitable, we were making money. And it made it more difficult for people who were working with me, because it was kind of like organized chaos a little bit. So I had to learn to slow down, take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that a lot of founders, startups don't take this, they don't figure that out, and they can't make the transition. It's a different skill set. Yeah. When you have a company that's profitable with employees, and you got systems, you got to run this and do that and pay attention to profitability and know your numbers and all, as opposed to when you're getting started. And look, you've seen large corporations throw out their CEO because the guy was the entrepreneur's founder. Maybe in some cases he came back, but he wasn't able to be the executive, to do the executive things that you need to take the company to the next, level. And that's definitely a hard one, I think, for the average entrepreneur if he gets that far. It
takes a lot of inside reflection
Yeah.
Right. And it takes a lot of being honest with yourself and looking
And
in the
humble.
mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
You know,
because the humbleness did not get you to where you are, right? If you got to have a lot of balls, you got to have a lot of perseverance, you got to have a hard shell, right? You got to be willing to take no. If you're raising money, you might have to visit 300 people before you get somebody to say yes. I don't know. So you have to have a resilience and a thick skin. That is not what you need to then say, okay, maybe I'm not capable of doing this myself. I need other people to come in around me and support me or whatever. It's a hard shift or pivot to make, you know?
I really feel like, and maybe you would agree with me here, I really feel like there's two different, I won't say jobs or roles, but there's the difference between business building and managing a business.
No question about it. And some people like you make the transition and recognize, okay, I got to change my skill set. I got to learn this. But a lot of people don't. Yeah. And they don't recognize it. And look, that's when it's really good. Why I recommend to people to, find a good coach, to find a good mentor, to maybe create a small advisory board for your business and use people that have other expertise and aren't so in the day-to-day of your business. Because that's how you get lost. You'll get lost in the forest of your business.
I put off a coach for about 10 years. And for me, it was an internal sign of weakness. Like, oh, I mean, I don't
see, there you go. Right. And you probably should have done it 5 years before, 10 years before that. Right.
Yeah. Well, we just did one. So, what we did is we did this retrospective assessment through a large consulting company where basically, what I'm trying to do is think of how, great, we're, multiple millions of dollars. How can I get to $20 million or 30 million? How can we get to this next level? Right.
By the way, a new skill set. It's a different skill set now to run a $20 million business versus the $1 or $2 million
and a different perspective, So I said, I need to get an honest opinion of where we're at. So we called a really large consulting, one of those big consulting companies. They came in and did a retrospective, and it was the most interesting thing. They interviewed everybody for over an hour, everybody in the company. They did surveys. They basically spent tons of time. And then what they do, if any of you guys listening to the podcast get a chance to do this, it's a really interesting. So, when you're the founder of a company, it's your baby. It's your, if someone says anything about it, if you feel it, right? So I had to sit through, it's like a firing squad of 8 different, MBAs from this company. And with putting together this 30, 40 page report of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Right. And I had to stop myself because the good I loved.
But the bad and the ugly is 2/3 of the report. So then you got to take it. Got to take it.
And I would argue every point with them. So once we got down to I started, well, this person doesn't understand.
Right. You had excuse. I mean, but that's typical. That's your nature. That's human. That's being a human being. And it's hard to stop yourself. You need a voice in your head to say, Oliver, shut up. Listen. Right?
I had to do it. You're like, so, I took the report home and I was looking at it, and, some of the things were, I'm looking at them, they were like, okay, this person has no idea what they're talking about. But for me, it was where did they get this from? What was the feeling that made them think this? You know what I mean? So I ended up taking this massive deck and basically trying to truncate it into about a dozen or less principles, right? So it could be a lack of focus, right? It could be the, having a clear voice, having everybody understand what our vision is. It could be things like, not knowing enough about the personal lives of our employees and wanting a deeper connection with me personally, things that all these type of things that have came up, right? And I basically, I've been working through this punch list and trying to create changes in my behavior to accommodate this. And it's really weird. Unsolicited, I just I got a 360 of myself the other day. We do 360s and I take one from everyone in the company. I want one. So, and it was interesting that people made multiple comments that since we've engaged in this training, that they've seen improvements in some of my less desirable characteristics, right? Maybe being impatient in meetings or, over talking people if I don't agree with them or things like that when I get, passionate.
Right. Well, I think awareness and consciousness of what you're doing and how you're doing it and how it's affecting other people is 90% of the formula. Yeah. And once you're aware of it, I mean, unless you're a total dick, but for the most part, if you care about your employees and your company and the success of everybody and you're aware of it, you're like, I didn't know I did. You see yourself in a photograph, you're like, why didn't anybody tell me I stand like that? Or I look at like this with people. And awareness is really important.
And it's interesting because I used to get, I've gotten 360 reviews since I started the company. I've always been open door, guys, give me feedback, and nobody would give me feedback, right? Even if it
Right.
was
They're
anonymous.
afraid at to
They're
what your
afraid.
response is going to be. Yeah. Yeah.
So once I did this big retrospective and it was kind of all on the table, it opened the floodgates for people to be honest, right? Not just with me, but with each other,
Right.
right?
Because
So
they
now
felt
we can
safe
address
doing it.
issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's now part of our culture where we can, address issues with other people respectfully and work towards a solution instead of letting them fester and not changing. So it's been really remarkable. So to your point, a good coach, I think, and I wouldn't look at it as you need a coach because you're weak or underperforming or anything like that. I think that's the
The
initial.
best people
Mm,
have coaches.
yeah.
The highest performers have
Yeah.
coaches and advisors and people that they turn to, because you can't do it. Michael Jordan didn't win the NBA championship 6 times on his own.
Yeah.
He had a lot to do with it, but he also had a lot, a lot. He has his own coach,
Right.
and.
And I would say, think of it more as an accountability partner, right?
Yeah.
So, and someone to bounce the ideas off of. I find it hard to bounce ideas off of staff here because they're a little bit biased, right? They work here. They
Of
don't
course,
want to lose their
they're in the
jobs or whatnot.
forest with you, right?
They're not going to sit there and tell you to your face that it's a bad idea, but a coach will.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I
I think
recommend it.
you mentioned the word culture before. I think that's the piece that becomes more of an issue and more of an important element as you grow your company, right? Because then the culture in which your employees live and work in, do they buy into your vision, and do they understand what you want to do? Do they agree with it? And all that kind of stuff becomes so much more important as you grow the company and you have a larger employee base and everybody's, different jobs they get separated and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Culture is something that I've, it's been near and dear to our heart. And everybody says that, right? Every entrepreneur is like, oh yeah, we have great culture.
Right.
We make it a priority. We put money, we budget culture. We have money that goes towards it. We have people that are in charge of it. We have a dedicated effort from everyone because we made a comment to everybody. Look, we want this to be organic. It's going to be a culture of your choosing. But if none of you participate in the culture and none of you work the culture is going to be what it's going to be, right? If none of you, if you guys are all dicks to each other, that's going to be it's going to be
the culture.
Yeah. But if you guys care about each other and you guys are respectful and we have the culture where we're a team together, if all of you put in some effort with us and we'll help by doing things on our end to provide opportunities for that, then we can really have a winning culture. And, our culture is second to none. It really is awesome. People come here and they're amazed. It's just, we have this kind of thing. We still have that startup mentality. We still feel, even though we're like 30 people, we still kind of act like we're 8 or 4, where we're all helping each other get things done. And I hope we never lose it. It's a real asset.
I think that's a testament to, the fact that you recognize that and you cherish it and you think it's important, and not just important. Like, I think we have a great culture. You don't take it that way. You want to make sure you do. And it's important because I know some people that do some recruiting and they work on the branding of the culture because it does attract. So if you have the right culture, it does attract the right people to not only join your organization, but stay with your organization. A lot of companies definitely miss that.
Yeah. And now it's more important than ever. It's way more important.
Much more important than it ever was. I know.
Post COVID, everyone's recruiting from everywhere now, right?
Yep.
So, we lost a couple of people during COVID who, got to go working from home anyway, right? So now, San Fran, Silicon Valley startups are calling on their door and saying, hey, we'll pay you San Fran money instead of Lancaster, Pennsylvania money.
Yeah, you can be living in Oregon and they can hire you from North Carolina.
Yeah,
more competitive.
You could be in rural Kentucky and get paid like a Silicon Valley, engineer, right?
Yeah,
and so and for us, that's not sustainable for any company to match that, right? I mean, you have to be in those markets and those type of businesses to be able to do that. You have to pay your market value,
right?
And the market value, geography just completely left that market value now, right? So what do we have left? Culture.
Yeah.
So it became important.
Yeah. And people are definitely reevaluating things with what they've been through, and they've seen their friends go through and relatives lost and things like that. And they're reevaluating what's important. They might not take the highest pay if they like what they do and they feel good about going to work and the work cares about them. And look, there's a lot of people in large law firms that I know that packed it in and said, listen, I've been doing this for 30 years. I have a client, I know there's no non-competes in law, so you can take your clients with you. I don't need to do what the hell do I need to do this for? Working 60, 70 hours a week, commuting, not seeing my family.
Right.
It's not worth it to me. And they packing in. They're starting their own practices, smaller practices outside the cities. It's a big shift in a lot of industries.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Mitch, because I feel like there's a lot of micro entrepreneurs starting in the last couple of years. Like,
Tons. Yeah.
think of, and I say micro entrepreneurs, but think of like freelancers, for example, in the
Yeah.
marketing side,
Consultants.
right?
Right.
It's the exact same thing. How many
Yeah.
people have been
Solo.
doing,
Right.
web, programmers or designers or even, social media
They're all
people, or
freelancers now. Yeah.
they're all going freelance because they
Right.
realize that I only need to make, I'm making whatever, $60,000 at this job. I could do that with a few clients.
Right.
And I'll just go get a few clients. I'll take them. Same thing. I'll take them with me, even if they have non-competes, and
Right.
they'll go to work. But
and you don't have to be where the company is. You can be working for 3 companies around the world. A lot of these guys do. And yeah, I mean, the world has definitely shifted. It's gone from side hustle to your primary, occupation. And we're seeing a lot of that shift now very fast. Very fast.
And merge that with the kind of the talent shortage or the worker shortage, if you will. It's really created a recipe for disaster for, I think, any business trying to hire or grow in this climate. It's been very difficult. So, so culture, super important.
Absolutely. Well, I think in certain industries like technology, the shift of the population, people moving around, doesn't affect you as much as like the local diner that needs people to come in and wash dishes, and these people left because New Jersey was so expensive to live in.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm not making any money. I got to leave. And now they've left and they're not coming back. And they're all, and we're short on a lot of labor.
Yeah. I have 2 sisters that live in Midtown. Right. And I always think about that. How do these people, that are, working in the back of restaurants, for whatever, $12, $15 an hour, whatever, how do they survive? Because, they must have one hell of a commute into the city, or, they must live in,
poor neighborhoods.
It's so expensive.
Yeah. Look, either city's great if you're rich, and if you're poor, you're stuck there and you can't get out. You gotta live in really poor neighborhoods. And, the middle class, you just get eaten alive with costs. And everything. That's why a lot of people move out to the suburbs.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But I'm glad to hear. So when did you start the company? What year was that when you?
Oh man, I think it was 2011. No, 2007.
So it's been a good, so you're pushing up on 13, 14 years now.
Yeah. This one. Yeah. For Track 5, which is our recruitment platform company.
Right. That was how it started.
Yeah. And then what's interesting, right, is like I started that company, and when it was actually right, what happened after 2007?
Everything crashed.
Everything crashed. So in 2008, I lose 30% of my business like in one day.
Yeah.
And I'm scared, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I barely got this thing, this company's held together with, chewing gum and barbed wire. Right. So I, again, I've always had people say, wow, it's always been a skill-based thing. Wow, your internet marketing is really good. Would you consult? Would you help us? So at that point in time, I actually opened up another company. I was like, I'm going to work on this company, but I'm going to reduce the salary burden. I'm going to consult for 3 or 4, SEO clients over here, get them going. Well, that turned to like 5 to 10. And next thing you know, I'm sitting there like, oh no, I've accidentally created another company. So, we're doing this. And then, it's funny. I went out to lunch with a friend of mine who had a web design agency. He, and he wanted to get into internet marketing, and we weren't doing any web design and development at that point. I wanted to get into that. So we ended up merging the two little companies together and creating like a springboard. And we took that into what was called Web Talent, which is the company that I started with him. He merged into my company. And then we ended up growing it like wildfire over the next 3 years. I mean, we work with some of the largest clients in the country. We were a boutique agency, really, really good. Meantime, the Track 5 side's also, recovering. And during that time where I'm growing that Web Talent, right, I'm growing Track 5, we have a partner in the company, a majority partner of Track. We had taken on a partner in Track 5. So now there's 3 of us as a majority, who is supposed to be the funder and the wisdom and the, successful entrepreneur. And we were both young. Like, we're 20 something years old, like 21 years old. And the guy,
but you're still the actives in the business. He wasn't as active.
No. Well, he sold it as being active, but he basically said, look, I'm going to take 54%. You guys are going to split the remaining half. And we said, well, why are you taking so much? And we're doing all the work. And he said, well, because A, I'm the money guy. I have all the risk. You guys don't have any risk or minimal risk. Right. And B, I'm the one out of the 2 of you that started a company before. And he'd started a successful internet company as well. So we were both young. We were like, oh, okay. So yeah, that makes sense. Sure. So we did it. And, we had this thing where, the guy never showed up. and never put any single penny in, locked down the financials.
He never put money into the business?
Never put money in. He went and got 5 credit cards in the company's name and maxed them out.
Ugh.
And we ended up having this thing where, like,
I hear so many stories like that.
He wouldn't let us see the books. Like, it was QuickBooks Online. He would never let us
see what he was doing.
And we would say, like, I would say, man, can I see real quick? I want to know how the company's doing. I'm trying to run it, because I was essentially running that company, or I was running the company. And he would say, what, you don't trust me?
Yeah, well, see, there's a red flag right there. Anytime anybody
like,
says,
no, I'm sorry,
what, you didn't think I'm not good for that? You don't trust me? You're like, yeah, I don't think you are. Not with that comment.
And this guy's
but you're young,
guy,
right? Yeah.
And he's boisterous. I'm a 21-year-old kid. I just got out of high school.
Right.
So I would cower down immediately. I scared out of my mind.
Right.
And
he's taking advantage of that. He knows.
Yeah. Well, one day the bookkeeper comes into the office and says, guys, I'm quitting. And I'm like, oh no, what's going on? I can't talk about it. It's just not something I can be involved in. And we were so confused.
Right.
And I'm like, and then she says, well, before I go, I just have to do one more thing. Can I use your laptop? I said, yeah. So she goes in to the laptop. She signs into QuickBooks Online. Oh, she doesn't show me, but she did. And then she left. So I'm
just left it on.
Just left it on right in front of me. So I said, oh my God, holy crap.
Right.
I told the other guy who was a partner with me, I'm like, guy, load up the printer. I'm like, so I'm like, we're printing out the entire ledger for like the last year and a half. We took it home. He gave half to him, half to me. Went home. 2 hours later, we're on the phone and we're sick to our stomach.
Yeah.
Right. Flat screen TVs for, every room in his house, going out to dinner every day, and that was 2008. So we were having trouble, paying ourselves. So
yeah,
he would say things like, guys, we don't have money for all of us. So I will sacrifice myself for both of you. You guys have families, you guys get paid. And we say, no, we'll just lower it all and just split it. And he said, no, guys, no. I'm going to do this for you. I want to do this for you. We found out that and then the next month he would come back and say, hey guys, I have a little bit more money, so I'm going to take out what I owed last month and then this month. Well, it turns out he wasn't doing that at all. He was still paying himself and then doubling it the next month, right? And he was taking the cash out and then putting everything else on credit cards. So by the time we kind of saw this, we found out that we had, hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt for a company that was doing $300,000 a year at that time.
Oh, God. And
we had no cash in the bank. In 2008, when everything was coming down, it was the worst combination of things, right? So, basically, the other guy that was in a company with had a nervous breakdown over it, legitimately terrified. He had anxiety. He was just not dealing well with it. He didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I had no money. So I ended up going to an attorney, and I'm trying to figure this out. It's obviously a breach of fiduciary responsibility
might be criminal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we ended up having to, we basically confronted it. I confronted him, and his response was, well, I have another business, so this is how it's going to go. I'll scuttle the company.
Yeah.
If it's only 300, it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
And then we're like, whoa. So we ended up kind of like, and then he wanted some crazy number. Like I want $1 million to buy out my 50% of a company that's $500,000 in debt and $300,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't make sense, man. So anyway, we had to go through attorneys back and forth. It got really messy. And, for me, I'm 21 years old. I just got married. I just bought my first house. And this has all happened to me. I'm loading up with debt.
Yeah.
And I'm up. I'm not sleeping. I'm stressed out to the gills.
Yeah.
And I had to go through it. But at the end of the day, we had to make a decision to my other partner. I said, do we go through this and take the risk that we could rebuild this, pay off all this debt, survive 2008, get this guy out and grow this company? Or do we just let this thing die, cut it up,
start something new?
And we sat down and said, we've had so much, we have to really do a self-inventory. Do we have the balls to do this? Do we have the trust in ourselves to do this?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes. So we did. We overpaid like an insane person on the valuation, just to get this out and start fresh again. And everyone thought we were nuts. And then in 2 years later, what we were able, basically we just worked our asses off for so long and, without pay for, 7 days a week. But in 2 years, we were able to pay off all the debt and grow that company to over $1 million.
Did you have to buy him out, the other guy?
Yeah.
Were you forced to buy him out for some amount?
Yeah, to buy him out. Yeah.
What a shyster.
And the most ridiculous valuation you would ever imagine. It's, but for us, it was just like, it's just money. So I had to take an inventory of where I think that business could be in 5 years, what those numbers could be if this guy was out and how it would come into play. And I knew that if I worked tirelessly and me and my other partner worked together, within 5 years, we could make this thing massive. And if we had to start again, I don't know if we'd be able to get that momentum back. So we just took it as an elephant on the back, so to speak, financially, and worked really hard to go through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, it's one of the things in business when you're young, you trust people, and there's predators out there that come and take it. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard like that with guests on the podcast and other people that I've met where they met somebody who was older, who seemingly had a lot of advice for them and took them under their wing, said they were putting money in the business, never did, and just raped and pillaged their business. And the same thing. They're like, well, if you want to feel that way, I'll just blow up the business. I've done it before. And there's people out there that learn how to do that and just, rape and pillage these businesses. And it's just not good. And luckily you were young enough and had the balls, the stick-to-itiveness, the gumption to turn it around. A lot of people can't.
And it was funny, right? So right now I'm also a professor. I'm adjunct. I teach entrepreneurship, and we had a business ethics class that I was teaching, and everyone's assignment was to bring in an example, and I used this example. I went through it in more detail, and the class was shocked. At the end of the class, they're speechless, and one kid raises their hand. They say, Mr. Feakins, is this guy in jail?
Yeah, that's what they want to think. It sounds like criminal.
It's a happy ending, right? Like a movie ending. I said, no, we paid him a ton of money, and he kind
of won.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you won now, but he got his pound of flesh.
Yeah, and they said, well, but he did all that stuff, and I'm like, guys, in business, it's not. I should rephrase that. It's not right or wrong. That's the issue. It's the eye on the bigger picture, right? It's where you're going to end up, not what's happening today.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow. Like I had to swallow that pill, right, in order to get to where I am today.
Right.
And that's where my focus was.
Yeah. And you know what? You made a good choice, because a lot of people, I don't litigate. I think I told you that I'm a transactional attorney. I draft documents. I do negotiate things, but it is always usually a better decision to avoid the fight, to maybe pay them off, to not spend all these monies on legal fees, because forget about the money you're going to spend and the fact that it's probably going to trash your business anyway, but the physical stress that it will have on you and your partner and your family and your life fighting this jerk off, just get him out of your life and move on and use all that energy to rebuild what you did. And you did that. A lot of people don't. They just get lost in the funnel,
Yeah. And at 21 years old, 22 years old at that point, going up against someone that's over twice my age and obviously economically different and things like that, it really kind of gave me that confidence to kind of move forward. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was in my first year of growing out a business during 2008 recession.
Right.
And I learned a lot.
I'm sure the next time somebody came along, you were like a different person.
Yeah, it wisened me up a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's a lesson that I wouldn't trade for the world, because I don't know how I would have received that lesson any other way,
Yeah, and you might not be where you are now.
I would agree. I think and so, my earlier point, entrepreneurs give up too easy sometimes, right? It would have been easy for me to throw in the towel, go get a job. It would have been easy for me to try to start another company and succeed. But I stuck it out, stuck with it. And you really have to take a check in yourself, right? To know what you can do, what you can't, and what you believe in yourself to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So since we're on this topic of lessons learned and things like that, let's say you are mentoring a young entrepreneur, guy starting his company. What kind of advice do you give him when he gets started in general? Forget about whether it's an industry, I don't care what the industry is, just, things like that.
So I would break it up into a couple of different points, right? So, have you seen that show? Is it Marcus Lamone or whatever his name is?
The Prophet.
On MSNBC. The Prophet, yeah.
Yeah, great show.
I like his, it's kind of similar to mine, but he focuses on, people, processes.
People, process, and product.
And product, yeah.
Right.
People, process, and product.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most simple way to explain the kind of core fundamentals of starting a business, right? So you got to have the right people, and that includes yourself.
Yep.
The right product, right? And but also, I would say, when people are starting a new business, you have to have the idea first, right? And that's fine, but you have to be able to execute it,
Yeah.
right? I've seen so many people spend so much time on the nitty gritties of the product or everything
Yeah.
surrounding what they're going to
They're
sell or
on
their
the
service.
phone with China overnight. They're having this
Yeah,
stuff. Then they end
but
up
they're
with a
not focusing
garage
on
full of 10,000 units and they don't know what the hell to do with them.
They don't have any idea of marketing. They don't know how they're going to
Right.
sell it. They don't have any idea of like what the financials are going to look
Nope.
like. They don't know where the business is going to go. And I think tunnel visioning is huge, right? So, it's really easy to silo into specific parts of the business that you feel comfortable with. For people
Right.
that I know, I've seen them create beautiful processes, beautiful financial projections that
Right.
have a lousy product and no way to sell it. So I think it's really important that you take an inventory on the entire, entrepreneur ecosystem that you're going to need to grow your business, and find out what you're missing. For example, my Achilles heel is finances. Right.
Yeah, it's common with all of us. We're very right brained. We're very creative, especially in your business. You like to create, but not knowing your numbers, it almost sunk you before when you had somebody else handling the finance.
Exactly. So, I had to spend time learning that, and I'm still never going to be good at it. But for me, at a very early on age, I always outsourced my bookkeeping. I always outsourced that because
bring the professionals
my time is better spent on doing other things, whether it be growing the business. So
right.
I think you just got to be really careful with what you're spending your time on and making sure you're covering the entire thing, right? There's no point in, decorating the living room when the building's on fire, right? You have to take
a good analogy
of what's going on.
Yeah. I think maybe there's a fourth P missing, as you mentioned, and that's profitability, knowing your numbers and your finances. That's probably the fourth thing. I always say to people, put your ideas down on paper, write a business plan, but it doesn't have to be. It could be just those 4 areas. It could be a one-page thing, just something to work with as you're going forward with your business, as opposed to just, like you said, winging it and calling China, making a product, getting prototypes. You're all excited, and then you're not going anywhere.
And that works for the forecasting part of it too. I've seen people, as well as your attention, but I've seen people dump 90% of their money into the product and have nothing left when it comes here.
Yeah. You know how many people call me, Oliver, and said, Mitch, I think I have to shut my business down. I'm like, didn't you start like 4 months ago, 6 months ago? Yeah, but we didn't anticipate that this cost and that cost, because they don't even have a business plan.
Yeah. It's funny. I have a friend that works for, just worked for a trades company, like a roofing or whatever kind of company, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to go into his own business doing, general contracting labor, make his own little contracting company.
Okay.
And he was asking advice. And I said, here's what you need to do. You need to literally bring your lifestyle down, and you need to work really hard at the company you're at to save a nest egg so you have a bounce to move forward. And he's like, well, why can't I just go? Get yourself
with
prepared,
no cushion, nothing. That's
no
a little
cushion.
dangerous.
He's like, well, I don't need that much to get started. It's just, I already have the tools. And I'm like, yeah, but you're going to need to sell the business. You're going to need to build a website. You're going to need to market. You're going to need insurance. You're going to need all these things. Your cost, and you're going to need, it's going to take longer than you think it's going to happen. And you need money to survive.
Yeah.
Didn't listen, quit the next week.
Oh, God.
But now he's in the position where I'm running low on money, and I haven't even got the website up. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, you have to make sure you're prepared. When I first launched Track 5, right before I fully launched it, what I was doing is I negotiated with my current employer, said, hey, I want to augment my schedule. I want to work 7 to 3. And what I would do is I'd work 7 to 3, rush home by like 3:15, 3:30, and I would sell. Because at this point, I would work overnight with India building the first prototype of my business. I outsourced it overseas, which means I could do it. So I was working till 1 a.m. building this website with the Indians or whatnot, right?
Right.
So once it was done and I had to go get clients, I would come home at 3:30 and I would call East Coast. And then once they hit 5 o'clock, I'd move over to Central, then Mountain Time Zone, then Pacific. I would be calling till 9 o'clock at night, selling this thing every night. And then back in the office at 7:30, selling for the company I worked for. And I was doing that for about 6 months before I was able to move on. Right. And so I was doing it ethically. I was when I was 7 to 3, I was working.
You focus on the business that's paying you to do
essentially
work.
Working 2 full-time jobs. But, I was able to get the company to an MVP and where it had profitability and money in the bank before I made that jump. If I wouldn't have been able to do that, I personally wouldn't have been able to probably survive enough financially to get it where it is today or even to continue it. So you got to have kind of a smart way of doing this. And it takes patience and a lot of strategic planning.
It does, definitely. I think the most successful entrepreneurs that I know and that I've met, well, first of all, they're very driven. You got to be tireless, but they're also planners. Not to the point where they paralyze themselves, but they're just strategic about what they do. They think it out, they write it out, they think about it, and then they do it. You know what I mean? Like, people that can plan and plan and plan and write, and they're waiting, and this got to be perfect.
Yeah.
You can't wait for all the lights to turn to
can't do
green
that.
before you head
Yeah.
towards town. This is not going to
It
work.
never works out like that. And, it's
No.
funny. Like I've had,
And you'll never be completely right anyway. So
right. I had a meeting with like many different levels of my management team, right? So me being the CEO, to my vice presidents, to my directors, to my managers, and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
We're sitting in a meeting, and I made the observation that we're all talking about different timelines. We're all our focuses are on different things, and I wanted to call it out to them. I said, guys, you guys have to understand that we're all talking about different timelines, because that's our focus, right? My focus is 1 to 3 years ahead. My VP's focuses are what's happening in the next 12 months. My director's focuses are what's happening in the next 3 to 6 months or 2 months. And my managers are focused on what's getting done today, and I'm like, we need to understand that yes, we need to focus on today, but we also need to focus on tomorrow and next year. So we're going to have these broader conversations. And it was just really interesting, because the managers couldn't understand why we weren't talking about today.
Right.
Well, it's because we also have to talk about the future. And we were, my VPs were saying, well, look, I understand. Yeah, you have to do those things today, but we need to talk about what's coming down the pike. And to your point, right, it's really interesting how different phases of the business are focused on different things.
Yeah. And you got to recognize it. Look, the managers aren't going to have another today if tomorrow doesn't come.
Right. So it's important to plan out.
Yeah.
It's important to plan out. It's important to execute. That's why I'm saying, the entrepreneurs that are going into this business right now, you've really got to have a really broad perspective and a really broad ability to bounce around some. Like, I have ADHD. It's perfect for being an entrepreneur.
Right. Perfect.
I cannot
sit still.
Bounce, I can't sit still, and I'm always, my mind's always doing 100 things, so I can handle it. But for people that like to really stay on one thing, and they need to focus completely on one thing, and that's all they can do, they're going to have a really hard time in this business unless they bring on resources or partners or help.
Yeah, well, that's when the people is not just you. I mean, you have to recognize what your shortcomings are, what your strengths are, weaknesses, and find people that can support you.
Yeah, and if you can't afford employees, partners,
Right.
It's some people will say, oh, I don't want partners, I want the whole thing. And I'm like, what, would you rather split a pot of gold, or would you rather have nothing to yourself? Like,
yeah, right. You have 100% of nothing. Big deal, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Oliver, I thank you so much. What's a way that people can connect with you, interact with you, see what's going on in your world?
Yeah, so you can check out our latest initiative, which is trustedsearchmarketing.com. That's trustedsearchmarketing.com.
And we'll put these in the show notes to the link.
Please, yeah, if you could put a link to the website, that'd be great. Check us out. If you guys, any of your entrepreneurs are looking for some internet marketing help, feel free to check us out. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Oliver Feakins, Feakins.
I'm sure you're the only Oliver Feakins.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, unless you find another British guy living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But yeah, and if I can help with any of your listeners, I take questions all the time. People always email me. I've sat down with people, so throwing it out there. If you ask a question, I can help you. I'm more than happy to.
All right, Oliver, thank you so much for your time today.
All right, thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it.